Number two, adultery. Deuteronomy 22:22 and Matthew 5:32. Jesus says that it is, both in the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, it is permissible to get a divorce in the case of adultery. Part of the covenant of marriage is that one man and one woman would be one flesh. And adultery is the betrayal of the oneness of the covenant. It is the breaking of the covenant vows. This means that, yes, adultery can destroy a marriage, and adultery is a sin, and sin leads to death, and sin can lead to the death of the marriage. This does not mean if adultery is committed that you have to get a divorce, but it means that you may have biblical grounds to do so. Subsequently, you need to be very careful who you marry. For those of you who are single, the second most important decision you will ever make is who you marry. The first important decision you will ever make is which God you will worship. If it is not someone you can be faithful to and they can be faithful to you, you will be in a horrible position, particularly if and when you have children. And I see it repeatedly where there are children involved and adultery has been committed, and it leaves the marriage in a very painful place because those who are married with children who have been cheated on by an adulterating spouse know that simply to get a divorce does not mean that it's over, because as long as there are children, it's never over. You've got birthdays and holidays and someday grandchildren. Subsequently, some people decide we're not going to get a divorce, we're going to get help, we're going to work on it, we're going to try and get through it. Those are noble people. It takes both the adulterer to earnestly repent and the spouse who has been sinned against to earnestly forgive. Trust is built slowly, lost quickly. This takes a lot of tears and time. We have seen couples make it through adultery. It's not required. It is noble, but divorce is permissible. It is permissible. Number three, sexual immorality. Matthew 5:32 and Matthew 19:9. Matthew 5 and Matthew 19 are the two sections of the Bible where Jesus deals with marriage, adultery, divorce in the most extensive fashion, if you want to read it. And the word for adultery therein it's a Greek word in the original text. It's moikeia. And then he uses another word, porneia. It's the same root from which we get pornography. And it's a general term meaning all kinds of sexual immorality and sin. And Jesus is saying that sometimes it's hard to prove adultery because people are secretive in their sin. There are other kinds of sexual sin that may not fit the technical definition of adultery, but they do qualify as infidelity. Today, this would include such things as, a spouse who's got online nefarious relationships of various sorts and kinds, addiction to pornography, things of that nature. And they would say, well, I've not technically committed adultery and been physically present with someone, but you've committed porneia. You are sexually corrupted. And that doesn't mean that you have to get a divorce again, but it does mean if there is this ongoing pattern of sexual sin and filth that violates the covenant terms of oneness and fidelity, then yes, there may be grounds for divorce. And these are difficult circumstances and judgment calls. That's why it takes leadership that is loving and prayerful and careful and biblical to be involved to help understand and unpack all of this.